Sure. Gerard Ahern, Chairman.
Present.
Brian Holmes.
Here.
Kay Stoner.
Present.
Bradley Reed.
I think I've been,
There you
okay,
go, Brian.
here.
Thank you. And then Andy
Okay.
Kistitz is not yet on the Zoom meeting, so.
Right. So, okay. Well, good evening, folks. That we have on the agenda for a business purpose only is a meeting with Megan Moran with Cultivate Care Farms, 401 Main Street, to review and the approval of a proposed perimeter fence at 401 Main Street in accordance with the applicant's amended decision dated. So if Megan's there, why doesn't present the fencing plan?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Megan.
I can
Hi.
hear you.
Good. Can I also, Katie Avisis is the farm manager. Can we unmute her as well?
Can you hear me?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Great. Yeah, so we shared documents regarding the agricultural fencing that we would like to put in. I don't know if everybody has access to that or if you'd just like us to describe what we're doing.
Erica, do you have the fencing?
I do. I apologize. I'm multitasking at the moment. Andy is trying to get on and is having difficulty. So let me just send him a quick email.
Mhm.
Okay, I apologize about that.
No problem.
All right, so I have two items to share. Here is a photo that Megan had sent with what the proposed fence looks like. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Right. So currently, the kind of my predecessors at Cultivate Care Farms put up pallet fencing, which can be
Right.
seen partially by the road and is also in the back of the fence. So this would be professional agricultural fencing. It would be wire woven fencing with a live wire. So it would be safer, more sturdy. It would be designed specifically to keep animals in and predators out.
Mhm.
So when you say live wire, that's electric fence?
So the top part of it is, it wouldn't be
Okay.
something that is turned on during the day, but given that there's not someone who lives on grounds at night, just as a safety for keeping the animals in. It's something that is kind of standard with this particular fencing company that they use.
Mhm.
Also, if the animals are kind of rubbing against the side of it, over the part of the issue with the pallet fencing and why we want it updated is there can be problems with the animals escaping simply by rubbing up against it and moving the fencing.
Mhm. So is there notice on there? Like, is it electrified to the touch if a human were to touch the fence?
Yeah, we could definitely put notice on there. I mean, we have a lot of our clients are actually kids, so it wouldn't. Right, it would be something that would be posted. And if it's a major issue, it's not something that we would have to use.
Well, no, I don't, not that it's an issue. I just, the curious onlooker. I mean, your clients, you'll probably advise them or, remind them, don't touch it. But if someone in the neighborhood or someone was walking by and, oh, look at the animals out, go near just to prompt them to, well, they can look, don't touch.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And Megan, the height of the fencing is 5 feet, you had said in the email?
Yes.
Okay. And then I can
And so
also share.
So that was going to be along the front and on the side road that abuts that property as well? Oh, okay.
Yeah, so this is a design that shows exactly where the fencing will be. So you actually won't see a lot of fencing in the back, and it's not actually
Mhm.
accessible to people out the back way.
Mhm.
So it would just be in the front and the side, although that's right by Main Street, that we would need to post that people
Mhm.
not touch it.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. So the red is the Main Street, and that's the new fencing. What's the green?
It's the same. It's just that that's not viewable from the road.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there existing fencing there, or is it just the pallets up front?
It's just the pallets everywhere that you see.
Or even in the
Um,
back? Okay. Yeah.
yeah, even in the back.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah. I mean, certainly the fencing looks, it's professional and it's designed for that purpose. So, I know at one point early on during the hearings, there was some discussion that people thought the pallets were kind of, uh, a simplified approach to keep them in, but the actual professional fencing does, look more secure and probably, you know, what people used to seeing.
right. Yes, this man is well known for agricultural fencing there. I believe there's
Mhm.
another place in Bolton where he's actually doing some horse fencing, and they waited a year and a half to work with him.
Right, right. Mhm.
Megan, can I ask, you said that, so the top wire is could be a live wire?
So it's written as a it says if I'm just looking, so I don't know if this is being shared also, but just kind of the agreement and what it would include. So it's described as a woven wire fence with a class 3 galvanization. It also says, let's see, fence will be powered by 2 Speedrite 1000 with ground field. Wire will be attached to posts with galvanized double barb staples. I mean, because this is the first time we're getting a professional fence. I mean, he's used to working with, keeping livestock in, but also having farmers and people around. So I mean, we will work specifically with him to get detailed information, but we would never want to do something that would cause harm to our clients or to the animals. The wire is specifically just to help us kind of reinforce um, the fencing so that it lasts longer.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say that that would be my concern because you do have children that have autism and various conditions like that, right, Megan? That
Yeah.
go there for therapy. So I would hate to think that a child would touch, the hot wire fence. So I was just curious what kind of effects that would have if it's serious, if it's, I was just curious.
Right. I think it's just supposed to be like a simple deterrent for the animals,
Mhm.
but I think Katie would agree with me that it would only be on um, during non-business hours, and so that would not be an issue in the back at all. And in terms of Main Street, if someone were to walk by it, there would be a posting to let them know.
Mhm.
It's really just to help maintain the integrity of the fence so the animals aren't constantly jumping on it and deteriorating it at a fast
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I've seen them with horses, where they have it. We used to have a neighbor across the field that had horses, and they put in a fence like that. And I mean, we had kids and they just knew not to touch it. I don't think it was such that you'd get like electrocuted touching it, but it would certainly feel a shock. But
It's just an uncomfortable feeling. I've touched them many times.
Yeah.
right. So I think they're taking, yeah. And I
Thanks
think,
for the info, Brian.
Yeah.
I don't know
I've
what that
touched them
says about.
too.
I don't know what that says about
Yeah.
me, but
Yeah. Don't touch
That's why
that
you keep-
fence. Yeah.
do this all the time. No.
Yeah.
No, anyway,
Well-
so I think it's probably, as long as we have it well documented that, they're gonna post it and, and then if something happens, right, they would, I'm sure address whatever, I haven't heard any of the others have any concerns with the design. Have they seen it,
Sorry, can you say that again?
Do you know if any of the abutters have, had any input, or they, they step, I know during the hearing stage, there was a large pan community that was very active in the oversight of that hearing process, but I don't know if they're that is involved now, but are they aware that they're gonna take down temporary fencing sort of and put up this nicer or more professional fencing?
No, I mean, per the agreement that was signed, it seemed like only things that were seen by Main Street were something that needed to be brought to
Okay.
the attention of the town. I do know that the
Yeah.
aesthetic of the previous pallet fencing was a problem with
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
abutters.
Okay.
Gerard, just to follow up on that, I did receive an email from one of the abutters, just, wanting to see what the fence looked like and where it would be located. And she had no concerns after I had sent her the information.
Okay.
No other
Perfect. Thanks.
comment.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, now you mentioned your predecessor. Is that project owned or now by someone else?
When I
Is-
say predecessors, yes, so Deb Madera and Edwin still own the property, but
Okay.
they don't work there, and Andrew Lappin doesn't work there. Those were the founders of the
Right. I
original.
remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All my questions are answered.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Okay.
So for the electrical fence, that's a pulse, right? Versus a steady current?
They typically are.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just thinking about somebody walking up and like latching onto it, because when you touch something with the front of your hand, your muscles contract, and that's how people will get really hurt. But if it's a pulse, then they wouldn't be locked on permanently.
No, they're typically just a pulse.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Speaking from experience, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're very similar if you've ever like walked through like a dog fence holding the dog collar. It's like
Yeah.
that, right? It's just uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's a deterrent.
Yeah. Well, I think it looks professional. I mean, I think it looks
Yeah.
good for what it is. It looks, it looks good.
Right.
It's definitely not just some decorative, attachment to, add to the curb appeal. It serves a purpose. It's to keep the animals in. So yeah.
It's designed for animals. I mean, so that's
Right.
really, it's an advancement as far as I look at it, as far as, from,
Yeah.
doing the best they could with the pallets, just to, use a product that was available, but this is, a bigger step. So.
Yeah. And this is much better suited to what it's doing than I think the pallets were. Yeah. The pallets are kind of an ingenious approach, but it doesn't seem like the sort of thing that is really going to do the job quite as well as this one.
Right. Well, it also goes to the professional process
exactly.
of the business purpose. So it's nice to see it, more professional.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So Erica, this is just a business meeting. Do we have to have a vote to accept the fencing as presently proposed to the zoning board, or is it just
That is correct, because it is listed as a condition in the special permit for the property. The board does need to take a vote, and what I'll likely do is then draft a record vote for you to sign on behalf of the board, so that I can have it in the file, and then the applicant can have it in their file to show that this fencing was approved in case it came up in the future.
Okay. So do we have a motion to accept the plans and the fencing that was proposed to the ZBA?
Sure, I can motion to accept the fencing as proposed and plans sent to the zoning board.
Second,
All right, so Erica, you do a roll call on that?
Yep, so all in favor, Gerard Ahern,
Aye?
Kay Stoner,
aye.
Brian Holmes,
Aye.
Bradley Reed,
Muted.
Uh,
I'm muted. Now I'm not. Yeah, no, the fence looks good, by the way. I couldn't see anything during that
oh,
period, but yeah,
I'm sorry, Brad.
no problem. Yeah, no, I think it's a great change, and yeah, I vote yes.
Oh, perfect, thanks. I was wondering, I thought you'd have some input, but, that's good.
And Andy Kishitz.
Did you join? All right, Andy, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Okay, so motion passes unanimously.
Thank you so much.
So Erica, before we, so does that go the same, if we have like so many days, does it have to get recorded and all that? Or how does that
No,
work then?
it's nothing that official. I'm really just doing it just for record purposes.
Okay,
I've
so
seen
it's
it
not
done
the
before. It's a
core.
record vote. Yeah.
Okay, so record vote, okay. Perfect, thanks. Okay, so we have to adjourn the business session or just move on to the next agenda item?
Exactly right. We can just move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, well, thanks for presenting and good luck with the fencing.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
So what's the time here? Let's see. So we're already, we can start that, the next session, Erica, or are we waiting on anyone, do you know?
We can start it. We're a little bit behind. I have 7:09 p.m. We have the applicant present, so I believe we can start. I see Seth Donahoe and Melissa Robbins in the Zoom meeting.
Okay. All right, so do we start with the roll call or do we redo the reading of the hearing first?
Just all you need to do is read the legal notice for the hearing
Okay.
to open back up the hearing.
Okay, so in accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 11, notice is hereby given that the Bolton Zoning Board of Appeals will hold a continuation of a public hearing via remote participation on Tuesday, June 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. to hear and act upon, move this over a little bit, the application of the Woods at Farm Road LLC and the Shennys and Farrell PC. The applicant seeks a comprehensive permit for the proposed housing development entitled the Woods at Farm Road to be located in Bolton's residential zoning district at the corner of Farm and Berlin Roads, identified in Assessors Map 3C as parcel 72, approximately 2.47 acres. The proposed development consists of 4 single-family detached home ownership units. 3 units will be sold at market rate, and 1 of the units will be sold as affordable to those who earn 80% or less of the median family income to be counted on the Town of Bolton's affordable housing inventory in accordance with General Law, Chapter 40B. Tonight's hearing items will include the reminder of the remote participation guidelines, public comment period, applicant's presentation of revised site plans, and review of Orson Whitman's second peer review letter. And we'll address any other items as they come up. So with that, Eric, do you want to go over the participation guidelines?
Sure. So here are the ZBA remote participation guidelines. We did touch upon this at the last public hearing, but I thought it would be a good thing to go through it again. I did update it this month. So you can access the meeting, the public hearing by using your computer, your cell phone, or your telephone. The remote login information can be found on the agenda. I think we all know that at this point. In terms of the protocols for participating in the public meeting, it's just as if we were holding a public meeting, a public hearing in person. It's really the same protocols. So you need to wait for the chairman to open up for public comment and then wait for him to call on you. And when he does call on you, please provide your full name and your address. And then you can provide your comment or question at that point. So obviously we're using Zoom, just another procedural requirement. If you're not a board member or an applicant asking to be asked to speak in the moment, I ask that you remain muted throughout the meeting until it's open to public comment period and the chairman calls on you. Documents shared throughout the meeting will be displayed at the discretion of the board or myself. So in regards to public comments, there are various ways that you can get the attention of the chairman. You can raise your hand. That's a feature for computer participants or participants using their cell phone. You can use the chat feature. I'll try to keep on top of that. If you've typed in a question in the chat format, please note though, if we haven't gotten to the public comment portion of the hearing, we may not be addressing your question immediately. It may be a little bit after the fact.
Is that the extent
So-
of it at the moment?
I'm sorry, what did you say, Gerard?
So you had the document on the screen. Did you finish what you were planning on speaking about the protocols?
Basically, the only other thing that I wanted to relay is that if you are participating by telephone and not by computer, you can raise your hand. There is an option to do that. You can type *9 and that will on our screen show that you're raising your hand. And then if you're using a phone and if you want to unmute yourself to speak, you can type asterisk 6.
6 is unmute. All right.
I assume it's a star 6. I'm sorry, on your
Right.
telephone.
That's fine.
So,
Ask what you like.
okay.
Mhm.
And that is all.
Perfect. Okay. I know at the end of last meeting hearing, we ran short on time, so we dedicated the first 20 minutes, if it takes that long, for a butter or town inquiries. So did you have any letters that people sent in, Erica, or do you have anyone with their hands raised for questions?
I have not received any emails as of recent with comments or questions. There is a hand raised, Donna and Justin White. So I will lower their hand and unmute them.
Okay. So Donna and or Justin, can you identify, I guess, your address and I assume you're participating together?
Looks like they're still muted. There
Can you
we
hear
go.
me?
Yeah.
Who's this?
This is Donna White. Actually, I
Donna.
think my husband's on. Justin is probably on separately because he was
Okay.
driving home from somewhere. And we're at 167 Berlin Road.
Okay, thank you.
And I did send some comments in, but I didn't send them until about 15 minutes before the meeting, so I guess nobody would have seen them.
Yeah, okay. So you want to ask your questions, or what are your comments about the project?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. I wanted to just start with a comment that
Okay.
just my feeling that the considering putting 4 houses on a lot that's not big enough for one, the overwhelming feeling I have is that this feels really unfair to me as a long-term citizen of this town. I feel like my rights are not being taken into account, and that a developer's rights seem to be, feels to me, this is my feeling right now, because I don't know the legal, how this works legally, but it feels very unfair and unbalanced. And I just feel like you ought to know that. I don't know if it makes a difference at all, but I just want, I want that to be heard. My first question is that there's a document titled the Affordable Housing Plan that was published in 2003, 2004 timeframe. And there's a guiding principles section. And in that guiding principles, it says, establish maximum density target for affordable housing developments. Current single-family house lot size requirement is 80,000 square feet. The suggested maximum density targets are the number of units in an affordable housing project per buildable lot of land in a given site. And it says that for single-family homes, that'll be 2 to 1. So I would really like an answer to why we're not following that guiding principle.
Because I believe, and I don't know, is Joe Pesnola here tonight, Erica? I don't see his name on the.
You know, he didn't say he wasn't going to be present, but I don't see him listed.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a 40B consultant on the project with us, Joe Pesnola, but he's not here at the moment. My understanding is, you know, because the town does not have its in compliance with the state's guideline for affordable housing, is until we are in compliance, we have less say in the size of or density of projects that can come to the town. As current under the 40B statute is the developers are required to meet certain conditions, whether it be profit limitations, et cetera, but 25% of the house stock in the application has to be deemed affordable in perpetuity. So that 2 to 1 metric that you offered, certainly that's not the state statute at the moment. It's a 25% density that the developer has to offer as affordable, and the remaining home would be market rate. So if Joe comes in late to the meeting, we can.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep. Hello?
Yeah, Joe Pesnola here. I'm coming in on phone, not on Zoom, so Erica can't see me.
Okay, he's is that your 5915?
Okay, let me rename you, Joe.
Okay, yeah, 5915. Mr. Chairman, very good job. I mean, essentially that's it in a nutshell. The guidance that the neighbor is referring to is that there's design guidelines that were put together with a consortium from Mass Housing Partnership. I was actually involved in the crafting of that guidance, and it's guidance that tries to be applicable to 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, and a variety of development types, and really tries to give some guidance. The guidance is
I'm sorry. What I'm reading from is specifically a Bolton Town document, not the statewide. It's a Bolton Town document.
Right. Now, so I apologize, but there are the state guidelines. Bolton, on top of that, put out their own guidance document, which is not binding to the process. It's a guideline, and the applicant is free to propose whatever they believe is appropriate and present that to the board. And this process, this public hearing process, is seen to vet, that proposal with regards to whether it fits, it can be supported with infrastructure and septic systems and drainage systems and appropriate distances from wetlands and all of the technical features that are being reviewed through the board's technical peer reviewer, and have to be plans and calculations have to be submitted by the applicant to support that. With regards to the guidance document that you're talking about, specifically the Bolton 40B guidelines, again, not binding, and there's not a requirement that those are necessarily formally waived by the ZBA, like the zoning requirements that the board does need to waive. So
But has there been,
the board needs to act on the application before that. If the board were to say, okay, we have this guidance document that says that it should only be one house, because we say, in our guidance document, it should be 2 to 1, and we require 80,000 square feet, and therefore there should only be one house and not 4 houses. And the board were to condition the project on being 1 instead of 4, quoting that guidance document, the applicant could appeal to the Housing Appeals Committee, and the project would be deemed to be not financially feasible, and that condition would render it uneconomic, and the Housing Appeals Committee would reverse the decision. Basically what happens in these 40Bs is that 3 market houses and the profits that are gleaned from each 3 houses pays for the losses in being able to sell the affordable house at the prescribed number. So the subsidy, there's no outside subsidy. The subsidy is the market rate units, the ability to build market rate units in an amount that offsets the losses of being able to sell the affordable house to an affordable somebody that qualifies under the regulation as having an income that's 80% or less than the median area income. So to say that there could be 1 or 2, there can't be 1, because the 1 would have to be affordable. You need to round up. So if you do 1, 2, 3, or 4, you need to do 1 affordable unit. So it just, the financials work out on these projects that, the subsidy comes from distribution of the profits amongst the every 4 to be able to afford to build the 1 and sell it at the prescribed cost to the buyer, to the affordable buyer.
so does the board have a reason to believe that there can't be profit made with 2 or 3 houses instead of 4? Has there been any evaluation done of that, or we're just gonna say they might not make money, so we're gonna let them do whatever they want? I'm sorry. I don't mean to sound
Mr.
that.
Chairman,
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, if I might respond.
Sure.
At your
So,
meeting,
Joe,
I don't want to.
Just one thing before, with regard to those guidelines. So my understanding is where those may in the future come more into play is once the town of Bolton either permits sufficient housing stock as affordable, or we have I believe there's some period of, if we permit and we have an affordable plan, a town affordable housing plan, and things like that, there could be a moratorium where we have a little more leverage. If someone were to propose a 40B, we could implement design guidelines, but we're not at that state, at that, or that,
Definitely.
in the town.
Right. Just because the town's at 10%, or as you said, in what's known as the safe harbor moratorium, if you've produced at least 1% in the prior year, you can take a year off. You can still entertain a 40B, but that's where you would say, if you want to entertain a 40B while we're in a period that we don't have to take it, we're certainly willing to entertain it, but we would like you to follow all of these guidelines.
Right.
Okay,
so at some point, we hopefully could get to that.
Maybe I'm asking it the wrong way. Would you consider pushing back and making this 3 or 2 houses? And if not, why not?
Here's the answer to the financial question and the review of the financials. The state has ruled that a zoning board's ability to review the financials on a project and claims by the developer that they need this many units and to make profit to be able to provide the affordable house has been severely limited. The developer does have to submit a full financial pro forma to the state in getting a project eligibility letter, which is a precursor step to the process that we're in here. And in most instances, including this one, Mass Housing is the subsidizing agency that reviews that documentation of that pro forma and deems it to be appropriate from the standpoint of what they look at for financials. If, and only if, the ZBA proposes a condition that the developer believes renders the project uneconomic and states that in the public hearing, we believe that you, ZBA, proposing to reduce this project to 2 units or 3 units would render the project uneconomic. At that point, the ZBA may move into a full review and analysis of the project financials. So it's a two-step process. First, the board needs to propose a condition, and then the developer needs to make that claim of uneconomic. In most instances, what happens when a board moves to reduce units for any reason, the developers take the decision, take the approval with conditions, the approval with the condition that they believe renders it uneconomic, and they merely take that and go to HAC and make that claim to HAC, where they're likely to get a more positive outcome. So I don't recommend that anytime I advise ZBAs, and I'm not trying to make the applicant's case here. I'm advising the ZBA, and my role is to tell them what the trends are at HAC, what the regulations are, and what the process is. What I recommend to ZBAs is that they move through the process looking at the technical aspects of the proposal, and in some instances get into the aesthetics. What is the architecture of the house? What is the placement of the house? And not to just discuss density for the sake of density, based on the underlying zoning or based on any guidelines such as the Bolton guidelines. And if the project can withstand the density from a technical standpoint and an aesthetic standpoint, then they should move in that direction, because a reduction for merely density purposes is not going to win any days at the Housing Appeals Committee, and that's just the harsh reality. The law puts the presumption on the part of the applicant that the need for affordable housing outweighs the local concern, and your concerns, although very genuine, and that's why zoning in Bolton is 2 acres, because that's what Bolton thinks it all feels or truly believes is your local concern. Your local concern is that you should have 2 acres to preserve Bolton for what Bolton is. The presumption under the law is that the need for affordable housing outweighs that concern, and that's just the kind of the harsh reality of this law, and why it's so important for the community to get to 10%, because then you aren't subjected to it. Or if you do want to entertain one, you can throw those guidelines around all day.
So you said we can't talk about density, but we can talk about placement. So why are these houses basically right on top of each other on the street, on top of the street on a very large lot that has much that could make them not so obtrusive and ugly? And why aren't they
fair question? Yeah, no, fair question. And if the chairman wants to pose that to the applicant can run through why they chose to position the houses in the manner they did.
Right, yeah, and that is part of what we're doing with the technical peer reviewers, looking at the site, looking at the features of the site, whether they have wetlands, whether they have, where they have to put things. So, conservation issues, if there's any, so all those have to get looked at, as well as where to fit in the infrastructure, whether it be for groundwater, for all the water features and things like that. So that's all being looked at with our technical peer consultant, Borsley and Whitten, and they'll help us determine if the houses are too close together, if there's a reason they could be spread out, why they believe so. We have the fire department, police department will weigh in on proximity for safety and things like that. So that's a good question, and we are going down that route to his questions answered.
So are you trying to encourage the developer to put the houses in a non-obtrusive place? I mean, it seems like it's gotten pretty far along with this plan of having a house right on top of the road.
There's a big squeal, at least from what I'm hearing. So it's hard to hear that, but we don't design the project for the developer. We react to the developer's design, and we bring up ourselves and review those components. So certainly, if you have a concern of where something should be, or where you think it'd be a better location, document it to us. We'll get that to the developer, and we'll ask them to respond to that.
Okay, I'm registering a concern, I guess, that it seems ridiculous that the houses are right on top of the road. I don't even think anybody does that. I mean, because it's ugly. So I don't know why that's even being considered.
Gerard.
Again, yep. Erica?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do we have others?
No, we may. All I was going to say, I was just going to add to that it may be helpful to have maybe Seth Donahoe, the applicant's engineer, weigh in, because to speak to if they're requesting any waivers in terms of property offsets. I believe for the most part they're meeting the property offset, so that might be a worthy conversation to have now. Okay,
Seth, are you on? And can you address that inquiry?
I'm happy to address that if you'd like, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, thank you. That would be.
I know you don't have the benefit of seeing the plan in front of you right now, but there's actually a zoning table on the cover sheet, and that gives you a quick summary of the town's required dimensional setbacks. And it also shows that we are meeting the required front yard setback, which is 50 feet. We're meeting that from Berlin Road. And then from Farm Road, the houses are over 40 feet from that road. And that's from the edge of the right of way. So the actual edge of the pavement, they're much further than that. In some projects in Bolton, when it's a corner lot, it's been the opinion that only one street has to meet the required front setback, but we have asked for a waiver to have that setback waived on Farm Road. So in short, we're only a couple feet short of the required zoning setback.
But such a large lot, why are you building the houses practically on top of the road? Is there a reason for that? There's a lot of space there. Why are they on top of each other?
If you'd like, Mr. Chairman, I can address that.
Yeah, there's a buildable print. Go ahead.
So one of the things we look at in designing these and laying things out is we want to balance each of the other boards in town interests. After this process, we would have to go to the Conservation Commission for their approvals. And we tried to move the houses as far away from the wetlands as possible. So we're kind of stuck between meeting one requirement and then not meeting another. So we try to maximize that to the maximum extent feasible here. And I feel the plan has done that.
And for the residents' benefit, Donna, all those items are being looked at collaboratively by the different town boards and by our peer reviewers, so that where things are proposed, it's looked at to see does that design make sense for that parcel of property. So it's early on in the process. I think this is only the third hearing. The questions will come in and we'll vet them to the correct technical group to look at, and we'll just proceed down the process that Joe Pesnola mentioned.
Well, thank you for your answers. And I guess all I would say is please keep us in mind moving forward, because I feel like I was told that our input counts, but I don't actually feel like it does. Apparently they can build 4 houses on a 1 acre lot, and we have absolutely no say in that. And it feels unfair. And I feel like I'm wasting my time, but I can just ask you to keep our interest in mind moving forward.
Well, it's certainly not a waste of time, because we've seen on other projects where we've had, particularly on larger density projects. So we've had 40B projects that have had, in excess of 100 units, where they're dealing with 75-25 splits, again. But we've had, even smaller projects where, again, you're dealing with more than 30 to 50, in the 30 to 50 range, but you have a little more leeway to work with, maybe on a downsize of density that works for the developer to make that project work. Again, it is a give and take, but sometimes it is valuable input on if the homes get designed in the spots that they are. We have the design review board for the town looks at it and says, okay, well, how are those homes going to look appealing? How are they going to, represent a good quality housing product for the town? So, and people have comments about whether it be siding, window, so it's going to be an aesthetically pleasing result. It may not ever be the density result that the town wants, whether you're a direct abutter. At some point it could happen in any person's neighborhoods, as far as where there's available lands, we all have to deal with that. But the human input and the abutter input is important, and I have seen in my years on this board where valuable ideas come up and get incorporated, and the developer may have wanted to do something one way and said, no, you know what, we'll adjust to the public's comment, because it makes sense and we can do that, as far as it can work within their program, their costs and whatnot. So, certainly stay tuned and stay involved in, but it is hard if you just start with your stake in the sand saying, well, it shouldn't be 75-25%, where really that's the hard issue for all of us. It's the state mandate until we get to a 10% affordable housing stock in the town of Bolton.
Gerard, do you mind if I make one other comment related to that?
Oh, no, certainly.
So it might be helpful, particularly if the board chooses to do a site visit, if the applicant stakes out the corners of the houses for visualization. I'm wondering if that's possible.
Erica, Doug Duchesne for the applicant. If I could respond, I'm sure, and I understood that we would be talking tonight about a site visit. We would very much like to see the board come out and see the site and see what we're proposing. And as part of that, I'm sure we can have the corners of the building staked out so that the board can get a good understanding of where things are going to be located. Seth, is there anything that would prevent that from happening?
There's nothing that would prevent that. Would be happy to do it.
I think that would be helpful to be able to visualize the current layout. So moving on, Gerard, we did have, Tom, we had another resident seeking to speak. He's joining right now. He must have gotten kicked out. So 1 minute. All right, Tom, are you there? Tom?
Okay, sorry, I lost the connection. My Zoom crashed and I had to come back in again. Okay, and I got video now too. That's nice. You can see my ugly face. Okay, so
Tom, do you mind just stating your full name and your address, please?
Sorry about that. Tom Kashuba, 173 Berlin Road, and a direct abutter of the property looking down on it. And I can right away totally triple confirm all the feelings that Donna and Justin White had. It is just not appearing that the onus of this discussion and moving forward of the procedural aspects to this project are putting the onus of honoring the needs of the town and the people first. The developer of any project needs to come to the town hat in hand and see how they can serve the public need. Yes, we know about 40B. However, it does not mean, as was intimated just shortly ago, that if there is an appeal and it doesn't work, there's like an automatic approval. No, no. If it doesn't work, it's up to the developer to come back to the town with an alternative. It seems that we have a disjointed, broken thing here to where everything defaults to what the developer wants. It's like all the couching of the phrases, of the wording, all seem to point to that same deferential feeling that, you know, this is what the developer's doing. This is what 40B allows him to do. Okay, so he goes, does it. It's not, I'm missing the point to where the keepers of the public trust, the ZBA and the city councils, are not like standing forward and say, wait a second, what is, you know, what are the needs of the people? How can it be met? And are there alternatives? As Donna suggested, and we both suggested in the last meeting, there's many other ways to cut this up. I mean, you could have one nice house. Does the developer not have the wherewithal to develop one nice house profitably? That's like, to me, the greatest question of all. Okay, we got a piece of land that's 2.47 acres. Sorry, no, it's not 2.47 acres. You put in all the wetlands and zoning things and watersheds, it's like a quarter of an acre that's buildable upon. And so like you're cramming essentially 4 houses into a quarter of an acre, if not a smaller amount. So again, we have to ask the common sense questions. Why 40B at all? Why not one nice house? He can't build a nice house profitably? That's to me a red flag. How can he not build a house affordably? Did he pay too much for the land? That's his problem as a business person. So did he preconceive that he would be able to build 4 units and have it go ahead? I mean, there seems to be a missing piece of communication between the developer and us, the town. Some other points are we seem to have an entirely wrong approach, which I just covered. All conversations seem to be towards a third party. I just covered that. And what about, again, 1 house, 2 houses? Why not no affordable housing? I'm not against affordable housing. I love the idea. But if it's a matter of economics, why not 1 house? Why not 2 houses, which is really tight on a 1/4 acre? And judging by the limits of what's permissible, it's not up to the third parties. The onus is for the keepers of the public trust. I already mentioned that. Third party should offer a design. The town judges the design. We go back and forth a few times and come up with a design that he can build 1 unit, 2 units affordably. So something's wrong with the cost economic equation that he has to build 4 houses. To me, that is only egregious profit taking. In such a small space, it's a perfect slot, even though we'd like nothing there because it breaks the farm area. But if it has to be something, 1 nice house. Because we have another aspect to this. We have the affordability in terms of what are the asset values of the abutting properties. You build a lot of smaller, lower cost homes and you drop the value of all the abutting properties almost instantly. That's the way they compute values of a house, by the abutting properties. And secondly, what about taxes? Are you going to lower our taxes when our abutting values go down? This kind of thing. Third party, again, should offer a design. We judge the design. We see if we can work it out. And third party, if they appeal and not found economic, the comment I just heard was it's sort of an automatic approval. Sorry, no. If it's uneconomic, it has to be redesigned. We're here to help. I mean, we're not against development. We're against this development as proposed. It is so far off the reservation. You take off the 40B carte blanche, and you are breaking every rule in Bolton. There is no rule that's not being broken here. It's like it's impinging upon the watershed zones. It's impinging upon everything. This was covered in last meeting as Erica nicely pointed out with the designs. It's like it's breaking every single rule. Fine, 40B allows that, but we're missing the obvious. Is there an alternative that doesn't even need 40B? Like 1 nice house. These things we are feeling really bad that are not being discussed. It feels like the developer creates a plan and we just have to allow it. And if it's 40B, we walk away. No, we can tell them, why don't you come back with a plan that's 1 house? If it's not 40B because you can't afford it at a lower price, fine, make it a nicer house. These kind of avenues of pursuit, we're missing in the conversation here. And I think Donna, in my conversations with her, feels the same way. And I'm sure every other abutter probably feels the same way. So again, there's no requirement that it be affordable housing. There's no requirement that this be 40B. We have a piece of land that a developer wants to develop on. Let him put 1 nice house on it. Can he not build it affordably? Then I would have raised red flags as to whether he is a viable interest to conduct this project. And I think just covered everything. That's about it for now, among all the other notes I made in the last meeting. I stand down for now.
Gerard, I can see you speaking, but I think your audio's still not working.
Me?
No, I'm sorry. I'm speaking to the chairman.
Okay, sorry.
You don't appear to be muted.
Did you hear me okay, Erica?
I did, Tom. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank
you. Gerard,
It doesn't look like his audio is on.
Yeah, this is Brad. I just wanted to throw in a quick comments. So, a lot of what the town is facing is basically mandated by state law, and the town is in a very limited position to change much of it. So I may agree philosophically with a lot of the points made here, but call your legislature because they're the ones who put the law in.
Is there no option to come back to developer with a non-40B single nice home? Why is that not possible? It's like, again, we feel like Donna stated and I stated before, is like, just because the developer puts something in motion, it's like, we got to let it go. Why not work with the developer to come up with an alternative? It's like, is there no angle in there? Is there no possibility? Does the law just let third parties come in and do what they want? I mean, there must be some interaction between the town and the developer. on behalf of the town's participants and their citizenry.
So I can add a little bit to Brad's point. This is Brian on the board. So Tom, like Brad had said, I think there's some things that we agree with you on, but there's the developer owns the land. And so he has the right to go and put together a proposal, which is, 4 houses because of, the 40B laws. And to Brad's point, we have to allow him to put that proposal together. And then we have to take a look at all the different, bylaws and figure out where they might need zoning approval, for us to approve or disapprove of the development. But it's not, in our, it's not our say to go back and say, hey, we don't like that you want to go after us as a 40B with 4 developments. We'd like you to put one nice house there.
Why not? Why not?
Because he's within the law. He's within state law to say, listen, we want to put 4 houses there and have one of them be affordable. He's operating within state law. So, the drawback would be, maybe I wish I bought the land and put one house on there and sold it, right? And that would be what how I would want to manage that land. This is his land, and that's how he wants to manage it. So we have to then, to Brad's point, everyone else's point, look at it from the town's standpoint, look at it from the zoning board standpoint, ask the questions that we need to ask and get through a process. But, this is something we've been through before. We know that there are certain things that the state will come back and say, well, because you are under the 10% guidelines, you're going to have to work differently with the developer to help them make this happen. So we are, to Brad's point, there are issues and concerns with kind of the state law, and I would say the same thing. We need to make sure we think of that the next time we're voting for our state representatives.
However, that's only because the developer has chosen a 40B. There's no mandate that this has to be a 40B. So that's
we don't mandate that. It's the developer's choice. It's the developer's property. It's the developer's right under state mass general law to propose that property to be what he's going to build on that. So until we have our 10% stock in town, a developer of a parcel of land in Bolton can go file an application to get a 40B started and get vetted as being, a limited dividend organization, do the pre-work that has to be required to be able to file a 40B, and then they file it. But we can't say, well, yes, we don't really want that on that site. It's just not an option. It'd be great, but we don't have that. But if we can get to a point where we control the affordable housing in the town as far as meeting the guidelines, then we may have that option where someone comes in and says, oh, I have a parcel, I'd like to do 40B. We'd say, well, sorry, we already have met our threshold. We would respectfully ask you to consider doing something different. We don't have that that valuable spot. We're not there yet. So
how far are we from the threshold?
I don't have the current housing stock in front of me, but we're under the 10%. We're in the single digits as far as I'm concerned.
Like, is it, roughly speaking, is it 1 more house, 10 more houses, 100 more houses?
No, Tom, I can speak to that. So we're currently updating the plan that Donna was speaking to earlier. It's called the Housing Production Plan. It's a plan required by the state. We're in the process of updating it now. So if you look at our subsidized housing inventory, we're currently around 3.6%. So we've got a long way to go.
Okay.
In developing affordable housing.
So this particular property is literally a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, it's one unit towards getting to that goal.
Would the board consider allowing?
Please state who you're speaking.
Oh, sorry, this is Donna White again. Would the board consider offering other concessions to the developer if they would consider not building 4 houses? Like maybe it's a house, it's a lot big enough for 1 house, but we'll let you put 2 houses there, and we'll bypass that zoning restriction if you'll agree not to. You won't have to be 40. We'll bypass that zoning restriction to allow you to. Would you consider asking them if they were interested in that? Am I
That's-
explaining that
we've-
correctly?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. As present, at the present state, and the developer can speak to that, or his attorney, or that they believe that at present, the design they need to do this project affordably, to be able to build the market and subsidize the affordable unit, that is the current density size of this project. So.
But I'm just talking about something.
We could ask them to bring it down, but then we get into those other options.
No,
We
no.
have to sort of go through the process of what the current design is to see even if it's feasible,
Right.
with the technical, and the conservation and the,
Yeah, I
like the
think you
infrastructure that.
misunderstood. I think
Yeah.
you might have misunderstood my question. I'm not asking that he do the 40B with only 2 houses. I'm asking if the town would consider letting him build 2 non-40B houses. And
It's
if he
not,
thinks,
it's,
what was
yeah.
that? Sorry, I didn't hear the answer.
yeah.
Gerard, I can answer the question if you'd
Yeah,
like.
that's good. Yep.
So Donna, our current zoning bylaw does not allow for multifamily housing. So that's not an option, unfortunately at
But
present.
two houses is not multifamily. That's 2 houses.
It's
Two
still, we
houses
don't
on the
allow
one
for,
lot.
we still don't allow
One
for two single
But
family homes on one
Even
lot.
if it's instead of 4?
Correct. It's not one or the other. They're allowed to come in under 40B, or they can come in under our current zoning, which is 1 house per 80,000 square foot lot.
Okay.
So Eric,
You
I think
can't-
we.
Okay, you can't do an
Oh, go ahead,
override?
Frank.
So Gerard, the time, it's 8 o'clock. I think we're
I
running a
was gonna
little
say,
late.
right, so
Yeah.
Unless we have some recurring themes, we can certainly, get some feedback throughout the process, but I think we should move on to the next item.
Okay,
Again,
just before we
if we
close
move
that, please, just before we close that item, can we at least get an
speaking, sir?
affirmation that we will approach the developers on alternate ideas? I mean, they're all human, we talk. Can we not
Yeah, we
even
do,
approach
and-
them?
Yeah, write a letter to the town, to the ZBA, asking what inquiry you'd like us to pass along to that developer, and we'll pass that along and we'll ask them for a response. Okay, so Erica, let's go to the next hearing spot.
Okay.
Okay, so presentation of revised site plans.
Mr. Chairman, Douglas Deshane, representing the
Hi, Doug.
applicant. How are you?
I'm pretty
In
well.
light of the fact that we have been, we've been burning time here, perhaps if we could go to the peer review discussion, I think all of the changes that were made to the plan were made in response to that, so that by going over the peer review information, we will in fact see all of the changes, and rather than have Seth go through all of that and then re-review it with the peer reviewer, just a suggestion. It's up to the board. Mr. Seth is available to give you a quick overview, but I think we're going to end up reviewing a lot of those changes with the peer review. But
Yeah, no,
whatever
let's,
you prefer.
yeah, I agree. Let's do it efficiently. I mean, we in the last couple of hearings, we felt that we had a short period for the public review, so they had, we had a good discussion for that public portion. So if the peer review is ready to present their revised letter, then Seth can piggyback after that, and with efficiency is great.
Thank you.
Thanks for the recommendation.
Want me to start?
Sure. Is this
This is Janet Bernardo from the Horsley
sure.
Witten Group.
Yep, thanks, Janet.
How are you?
I'm well.
Horsley Witten has produced 2 letters, but Erica, just keep the plan right where it is. Our latest letter, our second peer review letter was dated June 16th, in response to the applicant's revised plans that was generated from our initial peer review that we talked about the last time. There's a wetlands component as well as a stormwater component. Do you have a preference from the board of which we discuss first?
No, for your preference.
Because then I think I'll do stormwater first because I like it better. It's easier for me.
Okay.
I have just figured out recently, if Erica, you keep that plan right there. I have figured out recently how to draw a little bit on this. So I'm curious if this actually works.
Mm-hmm.
You see anything? Oh, but I'm doing it in white somehow. Huh.
I see the cursor move.
No, I don't know how to change the color.
Janet, do you have a copy of the site plans in PDF format?
I do.
If you'd
Let me
like to,
share my screen.
I'll let you share your screen so that you can do that.
Okay. Right. I think I go to share. I think I go to site plan. Can you see that?
Yep.
Whoops, no, I didn't mean to do it that way, but. I even colored it already.
Oh, nice.
So as has been discussed already, the applicant has proposed these 4 houses that are located on Farm Road and Berlin Road. The green line represents the 25-foot no disturb line off of the wetland. I didn't color in the wetland is here. Can you see my cursor move? There is a septic system, a proposed septic system, and right now the stormwater management is proposed that there's a catch basin with a beehive grate that for people to understand, it's a beehive grate kind of looks like a beehive. It kind of has a rounded cover, and it's frequently put in landscaped areas and not in the roadway. Like a roadway is usually a flat cover, so the bicycles can drive over it. And so this is a beehive grate in this area. The water from this driveway flows into this beehive grate and then gets piped to this rain garden that's shaded in light blue. There's some under drains in the rain garden, and then that flows out. Anything that isn't contained in there flows out to this drain manhole and then out through a flared end section to towards the wetland. And this discharge point is about 100 feet away from the wetland. So from this area, we're not concerned about erosion that might happen at the wetlands, which is one of the items that we kind of talk about a lot and are concerned with. The thing that was odd about this rain garden, it was kind of more at a high point, so it didn't capture as much runoff as we would have liked to. And we commented about that in our last letter, because we couldn't capture this driveway that is also, the 2 driveways are shaded in gray, the 4 houses are shaded in yellow. So this driveway now, what the applicant has proposed is a leaching catch basin. And I believe that this blue line that I've drawn in is a leaching trench, but Seth can confirm if I looked at that correctly. There's definitely stone here, and that's allowing water to flow down this road into this leaching trench and dry well that then might overflow a little bit towards the wetland. This is closer because they are now almost like 60 feet away or so from the wetland. Definitely concerned about potential erosion, but the amount of runoff coming through that should not cause too much erosion. So I do think that this is a preferred, it's preferred to have some management of the stormwater coming down this driveway compared to, they didn't have any before. So this is definitely a preferred option. And they have met what we've asked them to do. There's also 2 existing structures on the property that are really more associated with the wetlands, but those will be removed as we kind of talked about the last time. The amount, we both were, Amy Ball is our wetland scientist, and she was concerned about the erosion that might happen during this removal of these two structures, and they are very close to the edge of the wetland. And would encourage the zoning board to work with the Conservation Commission and any concerns they may have for these, for this end. From a stormwater point of view, we've asked them, the only thing we didn't find that they did was add more spot grades because we were confused about some of the runoff going from these driveways. So they had said they added the spot grades, but we couldn't find them. But they did seem to address our other stormwater concerns. So there is an existing structure in the roadway that we were concerned because it seemed to be just an open hole that was allowing roadway runoff to just kind of drain into the wetland. The applicant has agreed to replace this, but they've kind of agreed, and from their response, it seemed to have a little bit of a caveat to it, saying that they would replace it if the zoning board agreed to support all their waivers. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that to support all their waivers, it's necessarily worthwhile to replace that. I think that the Bolton Department of Public Works may be able to replace it just as well, and you wouldn't have, the supporting a waiver of working within 25-foot no disturb zone because that's where the structure is, then that is an appropriate waiver to support, but to kind of full blanket support all the other waivers to replace one catch basin. I don't know that
So
I
Janet,
can always support that.
Is that hole or what, whatever purpose of that, is that on the street? Is it the Public Works responsibility, or is it on the?
It's from what we looked at, it's on the street, and it's just right near the site on Berlin Road. And while the applicant, if they are approved to construct this, they'll have equipment out there, and it would be certainly easy enough for them to replace it. But it's also relatively easy for the Bolton Department of Public Works to replace it too, and it would be to the town's benefit, and the Conservation Commission sure would appreciate it. But so I think it's great. It would be wonderful to have it replaced, but to the statement to support all their waivers, I had a little harder time with that idea.
Okay.
So from a stormwater point of view, they have met our concerns. Amy Ball did have a number of extra comments concerning the wetlands. Again, the green line is the 25-foot no disturb line, where the applicant is proposing to remove some of these two buildings that are right next to it and are pretty much at the 50-foot line. Your Conservation Commission has additional regulations regarding it's called the adjacent upland resource area requirements, and to add some more protection. My recommendation would be to get an opinion from the Conservation Commission before just accepting the waivers. They will have to work within the 25-foot no disturb zone to remove those two structures. But, there are other options there, doing a lot of grading in this area as well. If those buildings don't require significant equipment to remove, they looked, last time we talked, they could easily be kind of taken away. So do they need to grade all the area within the 50-foot buffer? If they really need to do this grading in here, we would recommend a very substantial erosion control plan, because it is very steep and the wetland is a sensitive area. There is also the potential of a vernal pool in the area that would have been nice to have firm confirmation if it actually exists as a vernal pool. I don't believe, at least last I heard, it was not investigated in the spring when you would do that research. But appreciating that a vernal pool has some additional requirements and setbacks and sensitivities, it's important to understand that that's something that the Conservation Commission will definitely be concerned about for wildlife habitat and supporting of that feature. So they also, Amy's other concerns were, there is a proposed well that's located here with a little red circle around it. It's basically 50 foot away from the wetland, which is the requirement. They comply with the regulations, but it is still relatively close, and making sure they're not actually drawing water from the wetland that would potentially dry up the wetland. That is something that may be, just to be a well, testing the well to make sure that it's not going to negatively impact the wetland, because it is relatively close, even if it is complying with all of the setbacks. So there was erosion control, vernal pool, waiver for removal of the structures, the well, working too close to the wetlands, and there should also be including a native, any new vegetation should be native species, and removal of invasive species. As soon as you start working in areas that are close to a wetland, you are always concerned that invasive species are going to pop up, and I think there's already a good bunch of Japanese knotweed, maybe, that's very visible. And you don't want that to get worse, so it's a matter of managing it right from the get-go. So that's something that the ZBA might want to keep in mind moving forward with any decisions that may be made on this project. I think those are kind of some of the, making sure that for the stormwater, if they have an operation and maintenance plan, well, that they should have one, and then it's clearly documented who's taking care of the various stormwater practices, so that regular maintenance will occur. So I was a little scattered there, sorry about that, but I think I covered all of the various bits that were outstanding, or kind of larger pieces in the that we're still.
Hello, this is Brad Reed. I have one quick question here. I see a leaching catch basin. My experience in the past on the planning board was those are a problem. They tend to undermine themselves and sink. And I comments would be on that.
So that's interesting. There have been problems. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems with the leaching catch basin is that they don't get maintained, and then they fill up with debris and then no longer function. I think if they have proper stone underneath that is well compacted, and the structure itself is constructed well, then usually the settling shouldn't be a problem. It's more the maintenance of it. The last time we talked, I would have preferred to see the rain garden down gradient of all of these buildings, but the applicant chose to add a different catch basin, which still works. There is, soil's relatively good. There is always a concern about maintenance, and I hadn't actually thought about the settling. You have a good point.
Maybe when Seth responds after you finish your presentation, he can talk to why that rain garden is where it is and why it isn't moving, and why their proposal of that plus this secondary area at the end of the driving by Berlin Road is what they propose as the best solution at the current time.
Yeah, and that's a great idea to hear what the engineer has to think about why the design was as it is. It's complies. It's just slightly different.
Okay.
So I guess I'm done.
Mr. Chairman, if I could speak,
Certainly. Thank you.
I'll turn things over to Seth in just a minute to discuss that rain garden location, but I did just want to let the board know and anyone listening. We are currently preparing a plan and process report, if you will, on how those two existing buildings will be removed. So we'll be providing a plan and then a written, I guess, process of how it will be removed, including things like, how we'll protect against erosion. So what we'll use for erosion controls, what if any trees would have to be removed, how we'll remove the buildings, et cetera. And we will be submitting that to the board and presumably for review by your peer engineer if you'd like. But we will also be making that part of our Conservation Commission filing because we will need an order of conditions for this project and including the removal of those buildings. So we do plan on providing a plan and a written process for review by the board and ultimately for review by the Conservation Commission. And I suspect we'll have that available shortly. And I guess with that, Seth, if you could address the question regarding the location of the rain garden, please.
Certainly. So as part of the preliminary planning for this site, we did do soil testing throughout the site. And frankly, the rain garden was situated in that area because that was an area of better soils. As we moved towards the back of the property, we did find a couple unsuitable areas and we wanted to maximize our distance from that. So in short, the area was chosen so that would have the best chance of working properly. And I feel we've designed that. I think the peer reviewer found that design works as well. If I could touch on a couple other of the quick plan changes that we've made too, Mr. Chairman.
Sure. So Seth, when you say toward the back of the property, if we're looking at what Janet put up there with the sort of the arrow facing down from where that rain garden drains to, that's, and we're down there, that's the back of the property where you say the soils wouldn't be as beneficial for that type of structure?
It was, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thanks.
Some of the other changes that we made in response to some of the town comments on the landscape sheet, which is the last sheet in our plan set. We originally had some arborvitaes specified at the front of the site, and we have switched those to sugar maples. That was a request from the design review board. And then as Attorney DeShane's mentioned, we've added the outline of the buildings to be removed to most sheets. The existing buildings are approximately 13 and 15 feet away from the wetlands. Our proposed buildings are at 50 feet away from the wetlands. So we're improving that distance. I was able to drive right up to the Sugar Shack structure, the larger of the two. It's very easily accessible from the upland side, and we'll be preparing a plan that details that in its entirety, including the removal of it. And as Janet mentioned, and as Horsley Witten has pointed out in their peer review, there are some invasive plants in that area as well. And so we'll incorporate revegetating that area with native species, along with appropriately mitigating the invasive plants that are in the area there. So I think overall, the removal of those structures, it'll certainly result in an improvement in that we'll be getting structures further away from the wetland, and we'll actually be improving the area between the structures and the wetland by providing a better vegetated buffer in that area.
So Seth, that's good. Just I wanted to make a comment. Well, this graph is up there on this chart. Some of the comments by the town or butters leading into it during their allotted time, was concerned about, why does everything have to be in sort of this spot, right? And so this is good pictorial because of some of the site challenges where you have the wetlands and conservation and whatnot. That does shrink the buildable footprint. I just wanted to, so people who, may not have seen all these documents, you can see because the developer is trying to manage by de facto sort of pushes the project, closer to a defined envelope. So again, whether it's the perfect response, it's just that this shows you some of the challenges when you have the site. It may be a larger parcel than you think, but it's what is buildable to try to protect some of the areas. It does shrink the envelope, just from my perspective.
And one of the things that we did with the layout of the site is the Conservation Commission has a 25-foot buffer to wetlands, and they generally prefer that area to not be disturbed. And we've completely respected that with the layout of this site. The trade-off, if we start pushing things back, if somebody wants houses further from the street or they want infrastructure further from the street, the likelihood of us being able to do that would start to go away. So this is kind of the balancing act that I alluded to in the beginning, where we're trying to make sure we can meet as many of the zoning board's requirements, as well as the other boards that we'll see later in this process.
Thank you.
Doug, I don't have anything else unless you need me to speak to something specific.
No, unless the board has questions or Janet has questions. Thank you, Seth.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, who's that? Who's this?
Andy Kistich from the board.
Oh, yeah, Andy, speak up. Yeah, certainly.
On the sugar maple issue, switching those over from arborvitaes, I would assume that a sugar maple is going to grow taller and wider than an arborvitae. So looking far down in the future, I want to make sure that there are no concerns with downed limbs across our roads or falling on a car on our roads, or I don't know where power lines are on this property, but I'd be especially concerned with whether those trees are going to in danger of growing to where they're going to be in the area of the power lines.
So if I can address that, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
So the switch to sugar maples was completely in response to the design review board's comments and desires. There is a power line that goes across the property. We tried to offset them to the maximum extent feasible while still keeping the trees on the property. Originally, they were arborvitaes specifically to be a lower growing species. And I can't speak for the applicant, but I would assume that his preference is whatever the town desires there. So we're happy to listen to the board if they prefer something different.
I do like the look of the sugar maples. I just want to make sure that we're not incurring any town expense or endangering anybody in 20 years when these things grow really tall. That's all.
So Andy, so that's, okay, Erica?
I'm sorry, Gerard. Do you mind if I just make a comment?
I was just, okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say, if it's helpful for the board, I can reach out to Mark Case, our tree warden, for his input. The design review board made that comment because typically, basically all of our roads in Baldwin are scenic roads with shaded trees, and a lot of the trees that you see are sugar maples. So they were trying to be consistent with all of our neighborhoods. However, like I said, I'm happy to reach out to Mark, and I think he's a really good person that could answer that question well.
Okay, I do love the idea of the sugar maple. I just don't want to miss something when we're down the road.
No, I think it's a great comment, and he is, that's his job. I mean, he looks at trees and he takes the power lines into consideration. So I think he could give us a response, very easily.
But those trees would.
Go ahead.
Those trees would be on the project's land, and I would assume as part of their condominium association, there would be provisions that they'd have to properly maintain the trees so that they wouldn't get to an overgrowth state, possibly.
Mr. Chairman, that is correct.
I'd like to limit the extent to which a homeowners association has to be constantly monitoring, those circumstances, because as we know, that often doesn't happen.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I do have another issue, if I can proceed.
Certainly.
All right, number 6 on the letter from July 18th, June 18th, relates to the stone facades, in which the applicant respectfully reserves the right to offer those facades upon buyer request. Given that affordable units cannot look substantially different than non-affordable units, I do not think this is something I would go along with unless maybe they're offering that opportunity at no cost to the affordable unit holder.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, originally it was proposed that all of the homes would have a stone facade. However, the design review board felt very strongly that they preferred that the homes did not have a stone facade. So what my clients have agreed to is they would not provide it as a standard for the 4 homes. However, if there is a buyer that would, will only buy the home if we could provide a stone facade, we want the option to be able to offer that to the buyer so that we don't lose the sale. You are correct. The affordable unit cannot look substantially different or be lesser than the market rate units. And if in fact we offered stone facade on the other on the 3 market rate units, we would have to provide it on the affordable. But where there's an opportunity right now that none of the homes are originally proposed to have stone facade, and if one buyer chooses to pay extra money for a stone facade, then we don't have to provide it to the affordable unit. I suspect, though, I guess if all 3 of the market rate units wanted stone, then we would be in a position that perhaps we would have to give it to the affordable unit. But we don't know if any of the buyers will request it, as we won't be showing it on our, as a standard feature of the home. So, we're trying to be responsive. We would prefer to provide stone facade on all of them, including the affordable. But, the design review board asked us not to, and we're trying to be cooperative in that regard.
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
may I offer this?
Sure.
May I offer this? This is Bob Pace. Okay. There'll be no more than 2 if at a maximum. So I hope that alleviates that problem. Okay. In other words, okay, there'll be one identical to an affordable unit regardless. Okay. And there may be none that have stone. Okay. It will be an option.
I don't see that written into the document anywhere that there'll be no more than 2.
I'm just offering that right now.
I think Mr. Pace is trying to be responsive to your concern.
Yep, I hear that. So if he wants to propose some documentation about that we can review and make sure that we can pass it around from Joe Pisnola and make sure that it merits, what the 40B criteria is for making the units, the affordable unit not substantially different from an exterior point of view from the others. If that passes, then we can work with that.
Thanks. I'd like to hear Joe's thoughts on that too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Gerard, if I may just add a comment to that. The design review board, their expertise is in reviewing the architecture of the buildings. And they've spent a lot of time reviewing this project. So I would just hope that the board would take into consideration their recommendation to not allow a stone facade as an option. Just a comment, because I do know that this is their area of expertise, and they did spend a lot of time reviewing this project. So,
so we can offer, if they want to propose that presentation was like, well, not more than, and we can go back to them and say, to make it, one, is it workable? And say, we'll get Joe Pistole's input on, is it advisable to go down that route? But I mean, it's one point right now in the project, so we can certainly handle that up before we get to a close of the hearing.
And Erica, may I add, okay, there may be none.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So a little homework in this area. Let's we can get some documents on that and go from there. Any other comments from board members? Andy, are you all set at the moment?
Yes, I believe there's going to be some follow-up, so we're set for right now. I just wanted to voice that concern. Very, very, very cognizant of having the affordable unit look substantially the same as the market rate units. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay. If we have no more commentary on these points, Erica, what's the next on the agenda?
Review of department comments.
Okay, so do we have any department folks available, or do you have any comments that you've received?
We have received a handful of comments. I can pull them up.
Okay.
It'll just take me 1 minute.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Andy Kishers from the board again. I just want to mention while we have a minute that I did miss a portion of the last meeting, but in accordance with the rules, I did review the meeting minutes of the portions that I missed, and I have signed the Mullen form that Erica can attest to.
That's correct.
Perfect. So you're always in good standing with us, Andy. Thanks for taking care of that.
All right, let's start. Do you see my screen? Did I share this? Or maybe I
Yep.
haven't.
Is it Warren Nelson?
This is from Chief Nelson, correct?
Yep.
So we'll start with, this is the police department's comment. And this stems from the site visit that we did with Mass Housing back when they were getting their site approval.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do know that we met with Mass Housing on the site, and that was discussed as an issue. We subsequently met with fire and police departments to discuss it. I know Mr. Donahue was at that meeting and discussed with the fire department and police department what could or could not be done with that intersection. We did do the review as requested. Seth, perhaps you could just just give them that discussion of as to why we couldn't or weren't able to reconfigure that intersection.
Yeah, so the question was raised if we could realign Farm Road so that it hits Berlin Road at closer to a perpendicular angle. And unfortunately, due to the ownership of private property to the north, that is why the road is configured that way. It is not a linear streetscape there. There's some projections of one of the abutters properties that prevents us from doing that. So we did look into it, but it is not feasible due to property that's not involved in this project.
Is the stop sign mutually exclusive from the straightening, or were those supposed to be in tandem? I can't tell by sort of reading this.
We'd be happy to put a stop sign in there. Bob, if that's incorrect, correct us, but I believe there'd be no problem with putting that in.
That's fine.
Yeah, okay. And did Chief Nelson indicate where he'd want that stop sign, Erica? You know?
I don't know at present, but I certainly can follow up with him.
Okay, all right, yeah. Yeah, you may want to just follow up with them to let them know that straightening issue, is problematic because of, privately owned property, private, but then the stop sign could be an option since he has a proposed area, Perfect,
I will do that. Yep.
thank you.
Okay, so and then I believe DPW just basically reiterated what the police said. Yeah, he basically just agrees with what the chief had said. And then for fire, this is Chief Legendre, that he's reviewed the plans. They've adjusted the driveway width to 16 feet to accommodate the ladder truck from Berlin.
And the 2 units on each address, on each road, I think they've addressed that on their development proposal.
Yep.
Right.
And then just to reiterate that, or his comment about sprinklering the homes. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. I think that those are all sort of taken care of. It looks like.
Yeah, I believe that's all been taken care of. So then that leaves planning board and conservation. Why don't we hit upon the conservation comments now?
So, do you want to speak to those, or do you want me to read through those?
Whatever you'd like, Gerard. I can read them out loud, or you can just have the applicant respond to it. It's up to you.
Okay, well, why don't we have the applicant just walk through if there's any major, concerns with any of those.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'll run through them. We've been asked to pull everything outside of the 100-foot adjacent upland resource areas as established under the bylaw. As I think is obvious from the plan, if we pull everything out 100 feet from the wetlands, there will be no building envelope that we could achieve anything significantly close to this proposed project. That is a physical impossibility for us. Reduce the entrances from 2 to 1. We have had this discussion with multiple boards and people from the town, and the 2 driveways, the 2 addresses were all a result of our discussions with fire and police, looking to reduce impervious surface on the site, to be able to keep the structures away from the wetland. As you mentioned earlier, Mr. Chairman, the decision for the 2 driveways is a result of a balancing of all of the considerations that you discussed in terms of keeping things away from the wetland, reducing impervious surfaces, being able to address runoff. Seth, is there any other, restraint that played into the 2 driveways? I think the most important thing is that they resulted from discussions with fire and police. So was there any other condition, Seth, that was played a role in that?
There is, in that we have the rain garden situated in the area that would be used to connect the 2 driveways. So that area is mitigating the stormwater runoff from those surfaces. And we touched on it earlier that the rain garden is put in that place because that was found to be better soils for that to function there. So if we connected the driveways, you would have a lesser degree of stormwater management, or you would have alterations closer to the wetland for other portions of the infrastructure.
There's a suggestion to reduce from the 4 proposed structures to 1 or 2. And as we know, this has been a comment that we have heard. However, again, as discussed, my client is proposing this project within the 40B laws, and the project is not economically viable for 1 or 2 structures. With respect to infiltrating site runoff from all impervious surfaces, I believe the most recent changes that we've made effectuated this, and we are now addressing the runoff from all of the impervious surfaces. Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe
Correct.
we have in fact met that requirement or that suggestion.
There's very little change in runoff from the existing conditions to the post-development conditions.
Right. Pull the septic and associated grading further away from the property line and resource areas. Seth, I'll let you handle that one, but I believe that's a case of, you know, we have to put the septic where we have acceptable testing. And I don't believe we have physical ability to move that closer to the street.
That's correct. So the existing conditions plan details the location of the testing for the septic system, and it is tied to that location.
Okay.
Good.
In terms of staking out the property line and permanently delineating the property boundary with visible monuments, Seth, as part of the survey, were additional monuments provided?
No, so presently the field actually extends quite a bit to the southeast of our property. So that is something that we could demarcate that boundary at the completion of the project.
And we will talk with our client about what we could possibly do in terms of monumentation. So we'll take that one under advisement and report back to you on a proposal.
All right, perfect.
All right.
What's up
So
next? Let's see.
The only remaining comments are from planning. Well, there's design review board comments as well. They're a little more extensive, but here's planning board.
Okay.
Erica, I think at the last meeting, we went through the design review board comments one by one. We gave a written, verbal answer, and then I did follow up with a written response to that letter as well.
You are correct, Doug. That is right.
Right. Yeah, I remember seeing a letter come in, I think yesterday, Erica, from you or whatever on that topic. So.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So
some of these items are redundant. So I would say, Doug, anything that's of redundancy, just pass over if it's been addressed.
Okay, and that's with the
planning board.
Okay.
And I think you did give a verbal response to these as well, but perhaps you could just hit on the one.
Sure. We've discussed the number of curb cuts. In terms of the driveway entrance off of Farm Road, as far away from the intersection of Berlin Road as feasible. I do believe that we have topographic, we have the septic system over there. We have topographic issues with respect to sliding everything. Seth, maybe you want to jump in on this one, because I do know there is, physical constraints, and that we have moved that driveway as far off as we can.
Yeah. So if you look at the grading sheets, as you go further down Farm Road away from Berlin Road, the grade does need to increase there, and that would be a hindrance to putting a driveway in that location. And then I'll just touch on the other one. They have a comment on here that they are verifying that site distances exist, and we have shown that on our plans as well. So that covers number 3.
And four, we talked about additional rainwater, stormwater runoff be collected from the driveways. We've done that. Right. And then the planning board would prefer that we consider building multifamily structures in lieu of a single family homes to reduce overall impervious area. We didn't feel that, my clients decided this decision is that they don't believe multifamily structure would be more conforming or in any way more aesthetically pleasing, and would prefer to keep the single family home look in the area. And quite frankly, I'm not really sure whether going to larger multifamily structures would necessarily reduce impervious areas significantly or wetland buffers. I think we'd be pretty similar in either event, and now we would be discussing multifamily structures, which I'm sure there are some people would not agree with. So we have decided to stay with the single family homes.
Okay.
with all due respect to the planning board.
Mhm. Any board comments?
Only design review, and as Doug mentioned, we basically addressed them last time, and he provided a response to the board just
Right.
recently.
Okay.
So.
You want to bring up Doug's letter and
Sure, I
in
can
case
do
you
that.
haven't had a chance to look at it, and I think it was pretty succinct, and we can, just highlight their attempt to address the planning board concerns.
Nope, can you see it?
Not yet.
Okay, there we go.
There you go. Right.
All right, Mr. Chairman, again, we've done these previously, and but I'm happy to run through them. My responses are in red.
So why don't you just scroll through them, Doug?
All right, believe me, I can run through them. We've added the maple trees as suggested. We were asked to look at the radii of the driveways to make sure that they were sufficient for large SUVs. Our engineers are reviewing that. And we will amend the plan as necessary, but I believe, Seth, you've concluded that we have turning radius that would suffice for larger, family vehicles, the big SUVs.
That is correct.
Okay. Perfect. Mm-hmm.
We could slide down the list.
Mm-hmm.
This is a question about the 2 curb cuts, which we've discussed. And stormwater running from the driveway does not appear to be collected. We have revised the drainage as discussed earlier with Janet to address that concern. We have agreed with the design review board to provide 4 colors or more, and that once a color is selected, it'll be removed so that we will ultimately end up with 4 different colored homes as requested by them. Next is the stone facades, which we have discussed.
Yep, perfect. Move on to the next one.
The board had a very specific question or comment about the overhangs, and they liked the wider overhangs, and they asked us to carry them over to the architectural plans, which we did. So answer. They've asked us to remove elliptical windows. We did. They've asked us to either put a double hung window over the front door, or to leave the peak of the roof over the front door and add a double hung window. We are looking at either providing the double hung window or potentially a horizontal window, which would also address their review or their comment, which was they really wanted the elliptical windows removed and a different window put in there. So we've agreed with that. Again, number 9, all elliptical windows should be eliminated, and the garage doors windows should also be either rectangle or no windows. And we do want a window, so we are going to provide the rectangle window if one is provided at all. So we've agreed with that. Number 10, the front doors should be half lit as shown. We agree. The side railings should be removed from the decks if they're not required by building code. We agree with that. We will do that. 13, they don't like the keystones on the wood trim over the front door. We've agreed to remove it. They wanted to realign the right side windows that are shown on the elevation plan so that they line up. We've agreed to do that. They want additional windows added to the right side of unit 1. This will improve the appearance from the road. We are looking at that, and we do not have a definitive plan showing additional windows, but I will report back to the board on that at the next meeting. And if we're adding windows, we'll reflect that in the plan. We really need to see whether physically they can be added. This is one comment that we are respectfully not agreeing with. The board asked us to lower the the bottom sill of the windows in the bathroom, upstairs bathroom, while leaving the top of the window where it is. Essentially what this would do, it would allow somebody sitting in the tub to look out the window. We're a little concerned that not everybody wants a big window directly into their bathtub. And quite frankly, from a sales perspective, we're not going to agree to do this. We believe that our buyers would prefer to have the privacy of a smaller window next to their tubs. So with all due respect, we don't agree with that. And then the last one is they wanted some changes to the length and the pitch of the roof over the garage to be carried through the plans. We've agreed with that. So quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I think we've agreed with nearly everything they've asked for except for making the bathroom windows larger. And we'd like to keep the stone facade as a option as we've discussed. Other than that, we have been entirely responsive to the design review board.
Right. I say, Erica, on that stone area, she's going to go back to them. We're going to see what Mr. Pace will document is and what he thinks he'll do, and we'll see what we can do on that aspect.
Sounds good.
What's that, Erica?
I said that sounds good.
Oh, good. Yeah. That was so. That's all the department reviews.
Yes, those were the department comments to this point. Yep.
Okay. So I think at this point we have a little time where we can, if we have some public comment based on what has gone on from the beginning of the meeting till now, if we limit that to like 15 minutes, because we do have some, I think, minutes to review tonight as well. So let's close with some public comments if there are any, and then I think we have to look at a potential site walk. Is that on the agenda?
Yes.
It is, yes.
Okay, so maybe we should do that right now before we go to the public comment. So with COVID process, can we conduct a site walk now? With the mask rules?
Right. I believe you can, as long as you're, following protocol. You can wear masks, socially distance, keep 6 feet from each other. I think that is an option. If the board members are not comfortable with that, you certainly could go individually on your own to look at the site.
From my perspective, I'd like, if I go to the site, I want a applicant representative there to, walk the site and talk the site, so certainly that's the reason for the site walk. But I mean, I certainly get comfortable with the social distancing, masks, whatever, so no touch, and we can just look at it and get a better visual of what's there. So, but I'd like the input from the other members because we have to function as a board, not as one person. So.
Is there a remote option by any chance?
There could be. I'm certainly happy to, or maybe potentially the applicant could also conduct a Zoom meeting where I could take my my phone and obviously conduct a Zoom meeting there with the board remotely.
Yeah, I if possible, because I do have a high risk member of my household, so it's kind of tough for me. So if we could do a Zoom, that would be really great.
Yep.
And okay, if we're going to stake the houses out, you can go at a separate time yourself as well.
Yeah, I think it would just be helpful to be able to have somebody there to ask questions.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go.
Yeah, likewise myself. So, and then Brad and Andy certainly, can speak to their concern or lack of concern if that's the case. But but I think it sounds like we should probably have one. And if we have to do it in person or a combination of in person and Zoom, we could probably make that work. Is there any proposed timeline that would work for people where it's almost, well, it's now summer and people do have vacations and things planned, or maybe not with COVID. So Anyone have a proposed time when they'd like to do it?
Chairman, does the board have a preference? I mean, we'll do everything in our power to accommodate what's most convenient
Yeah.
for the board.
Right, that's what I'm at.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
No, that's not, yeah, I'm sure if we have a time, you're going to try to meet it. I just, first, I'm in town a lot with the COVID. I'm out of town a couple days this week, but nonetheless, I can be pretty much available. But I can't speak for the other members with their schedules.
I could do as early as next week, like Tuesday or Wednesday, late afternoon, early evening.
Okay. I can do that as well.
Yeah, that works for me as well.
I'd also
Brad?
respectfully ask that it's the planning board. Not the planning board, the zoning board, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Members.
Good for me. This is Andy.
Okay.
And
So then
Brad?
Yeah, I can work that out, set a time and a date.
Right. So Brian, what was the day? Did you say Wednesday or was it Thursday?
Yeah, I said either Tuesday the 30th or Wednesday the 1st.
All right.
Tuesday's probably better.
All right, Tuesday. Tuesday may work best for me too.
Early evening, the same, maybe it was around the same time, 6 or something.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tuesday, June 30th at 6 p.m. A site walk. That seems to be.
And Seth, does that work for you? And can we get those stakes in before Tuesday?
The stakes will be in, and that works fine.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
And then just to be clear, for everyone on the call, site visits are not public meetings. So this site visit is for the Zoning Board of Appeals only.
Mm-hmm.
What time was it so we can avoid being there?
I believe they're scheduling it for 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, folks. So we have, let's take up to 15 minutes, and then we have to continue the hearing to another point, and because we do have other matters to handle on the board. So if there's any new public comment, not a rehash of other items that we're already looking into, that'd be great. And Eric, can you see if there's anyone with hands up?
Yep, Tom Kashuba.
Okay, Tom Kashuba,
Great.
173 Berlin Road again. Just a minor one. It's not a rehash, but just for the record, so the developer is strictly sticking to the proposed project and does not want to discuss any alternative plans. I say that because there was a comment just recently that they cannot do anything else but the current arrangement. Can they give some kind of justification why it can only be the current arrangement and not one or two full-scale pricey housing? Just to give the citizenry comfort as to where they're coming from, to help us understand their respect of the common good.
Well, I don't want to speak for the applicant, but I think as far as, saying, well, one or two pricey homes versus 4 homes on the lot, again, they're availing themselves of the Mass General Law, Chapter 40B state statute that allows them to propose a development for the property that they own that is covered under 40B. So
I'm just looking for a comment from the developer that they do not want to discuss alternatives or justify the number of houses they have, rather than just say we can do it with 40B. I mean, there's a bit of public good here that would go a long way if they could do that justification.
I'm sorry, my light just went out. Just to Hold on. Okay,
Great.
went on again. Okay. I guess it's motion detector.
Yeah.
Okay, Tom. It's just that it's within the law. Okay, we're acting within the law. We think it's a great place for it. We think we came up with a nice design. Okay, we're not trying to degrade the neighborhood. Respectfully, I mean, you can see what's across the street there. I think it's an upgrade. We did give this some thought. You know, we went early on, met with the board, okay, met with the police, met with the fire, met with planning. You know, we tried to, we think it's a great place for this, okay? And, you know, you're never going to get to your 10% compliment unless you start. So that's the reason.
So there's no other variations. That basically is the only cost equation that can be done is 4 units, not one affordable, one full priced, or anything variance in between.
Erica explained that to you, okay? The zoning laws don't allow that.
I know that, okay, but 1 unit would be zoning. 1 unit would make the 40B happen. And then a second full price house.
No.
One unit you have by right.
Hey, Bob,
Yes, sir.
we really shouldn't be debating this.
Yeah. No. I'm not debating. I'm just trying to explain.
And that's what we're looking for is explanation.
Yeah.
We don't like to be put off with out of hand. Like, this is what we're looking for. It's those very comments. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you.
And Joe Cosnola's comments at the beginning about the process and why we're, you know, that's all factored in as well. So thank you, Mr. Pace. And so, Eric, any other questions for people raised? And then if not, we
Not
can
that I'm
go-
aware of. No other hands are raised, and I have no other chat comments at this point. Gerard, if you don't mind, I just want to circle back to the site visit, the comment that I made about it not being a public meeting. I just want to be very clear. The reason that it's not a public meeting is because the board will not be deliberating when they're at the site. I want to make that clear. It's for observation only. So I didn't want there to be any confusion about that.
We're going to collaborate amongst ourselves during
Exactly
that
right. Exactly right.
Yeah, good clarification, Eric. Thank you. We know the process, but yeah, everyone else should know. It's
Sometimes the abutters don't understand that, and I don't want them to be upset by it. There is no deliberation. So
right. That's good clarification. So with that, why don't we? So when do we think we'll have any type of major documentation or something to review so we can schedule the next hearing? You know, I don't like just pick a date and not have a purpose for it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I could answer that. Based on tonight's meeting and based on our work so far, the biggest deliverable we have will be the plan and the process for removing the 2 buildings. I suspect the board will have that hopefully by next week. Seth, is that a possibility?
Yeah, or shortly after the site walk in case there's any last minute changes to.
Okay. The other thing, Mr. Chairman, is I will be sending over a revised waiver list because as pointed out through the peer review, we are going to need a waiver, an additional wetland waiver to remove those buildings. So I will just review and update the waiver list to make sure that it is completely accurate and consistent. You will have that next week, the first of the week, I guarantee it. Other than that, I do not believe we're awaiting any other major input. The board's not awaiting any other major input from us. And I don't believe we're responsible for providing anything, you know, significant. So I think you'll have everything you need to conduct your next meeting within the next 2 weeks. So if you want to consider that, and Mr. Chair, in providing you the revised waivers, we would hope that we could at least start discussing them and go over those at the next meeting.
Okay. So we get those within, say, a week to 10 days, and then if they have to go to any of the boards for review to get their feedback on those waivers, or you can discuss them. So how about, I mean, within 3 weeks, is there a time that people have availability? I know, again, this is peak, we'll be into July, so people will start potentially taking vacation. So I want to be respectful of that.
When do we leave? The 22nd? Mr. Chairman, if I could just throw it out there, I do have a vacation plan the last week in July. So I will be here as late as July 21st, which is a Tuesday, I believe, a few weeks from here. So if we could do it prior to the 21st, that would be great for me. Thank you.
So how about the 21st? Does that fit into people's schedules? I will be available that time.
Does that include the public?
Yes.
Yeah, that would be public hearing.
Okay, 21st is good for us.
Hey, Andy, Brad, Brian.
The 21st works for me.
Okay.
What day of the week is that?
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Works for me. This is Andy.
And what time
Yeah.
works for people? Would the earlier start better for people?
Yes, I would even propose like 6.
Yeah.
It's good for me as a public.
Does 6 work?
Yeah, it works for me.
That's great for us. The earlier the better.
That work for you, Erica?
That's fine, whatever works for the board.
Okay, so how about we continue the hearing until July 21st at 6 p.m. via Zoom?
Okay, works for me.
Perfect.
I'd like to thank you all.
Yeah, thanks for participation, everyone.
Can we get a
So-
vote on the continuation, please?
Yep. So a motion to continue to July 21st at 6 p.m. Tuesday via Zoom.
Second?
Okay. Eric, you want to do the roll call?
Sure. Gerard Ahern,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
Aye.
Kay Stoner,
Aye.
Bradley Reed,
Aye.
Andy Kishjetz.
Aye.
Okay. So see you folks July 21st.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you very much. We'll see you on the 21st.
Thanks,
Thank
Doug.
you all.
Have a good
All
night.
right. Thank you.
Everyone be safe.
Thank you too.
Okay. So Erica, for the minutes, people will drop off and we'll be able to look at the minutes.
Yes, I can pull them up.
Okay. Okay. So I know I looked at them earlier, so I didn't have any comments. They looked really well done. So I signed off on mine to Erica earlier. So if people had a chance to read them, please do so. And or if you haven't,
It looked fine to me.
okay.
Yeah, I looked at them. They look good.
Mhm.
I reviewed them as I was required to do. They're
All
fine.
right. And you can't assert there's anything different than what they are, right?
Correct.
Right. Okay. So, okay. What do you need then, Erica? I know I did a digital signature to you, but
Yeah,
is
just
verbal-
a motion to approve, and then I'll take what you gave me today and I'll submit it. So I think I just need a vote if everyone's okay
I'll
with
make
that.
a motion to approve. Brad Reed.
Thanks, motion, Brad.
Second,
Roll
Okay,
call. Gerard Ahern,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
I,
Kate Stoner,
aye.
Brad Reed,
Aye.
Andy Kishitz.
Aye. Do we have to have a provision to allow Gerard to sign on our behalf, or is that not necessary?
I think we're okay. I think we're covered right now.
Yeah, I didn't sign on the board. I just signed like normally when we're in person, people just sign that they agree with them. I had done that and sent it to her, but so it was not like signing for the board. It's just my individual acceptance of the minutes.
Okay.
Thanks. Good question. So Eric, no other business? Is there just an adjourn consideration?
That is it. So July may be a slightly busy month for the board. We have the public hearing for Still River, and then I did get an application for variance. It's not complete yet. I've asked the applicant for a few more things, so that could be coming up as well. So
when is the Still River one again?
I haven't set the date yet. I've got to look back at the doodle poll to see everyone's availability.
Okay,
So
my availability might have changed, but
I'll send an email and you can let me
Okay.
know if that once I have a date, if that doesn't work, we can go from there. I think that's
Well,
it.
we'll do what we can do. It's
Yeah.
reasonably possible. So.
Yep.
Mhm.
That's all I had.
All right. So, so there's a motion to adjourn for the night.
second.
All right. So Eric, you want a roll call?
Sure. Gerard Ahern,
Aye.
Brian Holmes,
I,
A Stoner,
Aye.
Bradley Reed, Brad,
Aye.
Aye.
Andy Kishitz.
Aye.
All right, we're good.
All right. Thanks, folks.